Hello there, my beautiful friends and possibly fellow space blobs, depending on who you are and how you feel about the way you describe yourself. We are here. We meet again. Yet again, we are sitting together, and this time we are going to be getting into Gemini season. I find this to be such a dynamic and interesting part of the year. It always brings up a lot of movement and new ideas because this is mutable air energy, which means life is open for transition and shift and openness. We just moved through a very potent Taurus season that included eclipses and a Mercury retrograde. So coming into this Gemini season, there's this real sense of expansiveness and playfulness. There's also some pretty big energies moving through as we move through this season. So today what we're going to do, we're going to have a little review of Gemini, some of the ways I like to work with it, some of the ways I like to envision it. We're going to go through some ways to work with this Taurus season. So I have some questions, I have some general ideas for that, and then I'm going to give you all some of the big transits so you get a sense of what this next month is going to be about. And we'll pull cards at the end and have a good old time feeling through the intuitive messages. So I hope you stick around for this because we have so much to get into and I am just feeling the energy. Let's go. All right, let's review some of the Gemini basics because we all know that this sign tends to be the one that gets teased the most in pop astrology. It is a running joke, and those of you who are Geminis probably are very aware of that. So let's get into it. Let's appreciate this archetype, this energy, the symbolism of this, how to work with this, and just bring ourselves back to the roots of what this is all about. So like I mentioned, this is the mutable air sign. So there is a really deep sense of play. This isn't about holding a fixed shape or always initiating everything. This is about how we modulate between different stages of our lives. Mutable energy gives us this opportunity to modulate and change. For me, all the mutable signs really embody a sense of this alchemical process of moving from one form into another. So every time we get into Gemini season, this is really about our personal mythology, the way we express ourselves. This is a highly creative season, and it really is about allowing ourselves to modulate. This is a sign that's symbolized by this idea of the twins, and that has been part of what has been vilified when we're working with Gemini, right? Because it's like, oh, it's two-faced, or you never know who you're going to get. But here's the thing with the twins, and this also feeds into Mercury being the ruling planet of Gemini. This energy is about the ability to move through all the layers of the world, from the underworld to the upper world to the divine. It's about being able to be a messenger and transmit messages from both our immortal and our mortal selves and our soul selves. And so really at the heart of Gemini when we're working with it is we're working with being able to be that messenger, that swift moving breeze that is able to move through all those different layers of ourselves, and also acknowledge that we aren't just one single thing. We're not just one representation of ourselves. We have many, many aspects of ourselves, many different elements of ourselves that make us who we are. Those different elements come out in different scenarios and different situations based on what we need or what is inspired in us. And this is a really great season to acknowledge that we aren't just one kind of fixed, singular thing that we just are all the time. We are mutable, changeable beings. And the season really embodies that energy in a really, really beautiful way. And like all air signs, this is about duality as well. All three of the air signs are about kind of weighing out different aspects of ourselves and coming to peace with some of the dualities that are within us. So yeah, I think this can be one of the most useful signs to actually work with every year because it can be great for generating new ideas, for getting comfortable with ourselves, for playing, for learning how to express ourselves, and checking in with the way that we are writing the story about ourselves, which I think is so important and never gets old and is always up for a rewrite and a draft. So before we get into the transits of this season, this specifically powerful Gemini season, I have some questions, some places to explore that you can take with you into this particular Gemini season, because it is a potent one. And these are really great questions to follow up through that really impactful Taurus season we just had, that eclipse season, all of it. This Gemini season particularly, I will say this, is going to be about modulating and getting comfortable with the new ingredients in our life. So here are some things that I would suggest playing with throughout this month. What are you longing to make or create? First question. And then this is followed up by some really great places to explore. Are you afraid to begin those things that you are longing to create or make or express? And what are the fears that come up when you explore beginning? This is a season where we are going to be looking at those shadows, looking at those fears, looking at those places where we are being strict with ourselves or holding ourselves back, and beginning, quite honestly. There's a really strong energy of beginning here during this season. The next aspect of this particular Gemini season is going to be, what do you need to process about how you have changed over the last few years? We've all changed since 2019. I think we can agree on that. And it's important that we have creative processes and creative outlets to process how we have changed, to help it bring into our body and our mind and to give us some breath. So how do you need to process that so that you feel that you are really in concert with yourself and present with yourself? What are some new ingredients in your life that you need time to get to know? Make space for that. I think, we need to make space to allow those new ingredients to sing to us, to make sense. We need to take time to tend to them, whether that be a new interest, a new situation, or even just a new mindset. This is going to be a really important season for really incorporating those new ingredients into your life, slowly, but proactively. This is a very playful, proactive energy, right? It's communicative. It wants to weave pieces together because Mercury, the messenger, is interested in threading that needle through all the different layers of ourselves. So this is a really great time to do that incorporating. And finally, this is maybe the core thing about any Gemini season. Give yourself space to write your story and notice where you are relying on old mythologies about yourself. This season, in its essence, is about the inner storyteller and how we use that storyteller in our lives, and whether we empower or disempower ourselves with our inner storyteller. And yes, we talk about this all the time. I think anybody who's seeking and in spiritual practices, we talk a lot about the inner storyteller and the inner monologue. But this is really your chance to play with it and work with it in a way that is empowering for you. Now, that doesn't mean following all the scripts of what empowerment looks like via Instagram and all of that stuff. It's going to be really your own thing. Play with what that actually is and get into it. So those are some themes, some questions, some places to really play and explore this this Gemini season. Let's get into the transits, because there's a lot going on this month. I'll be honest, there is a lot going on. There's a lot shifting around. As we open up Gemini season on May 21st, Mars will have just entered Leo the day before. So we are already starting the season off with a really bold, powerful energy. Mars in Leo is very creative, very playful, very creative, very courageous in trying things out and seeing what happens. So we are starting this season off with some fiery energy that flows very well with Gemini. And then, of course, the sun enters Gemini, and the rest of May is somewhat quiet. We don't have huge things going on, which I think is kind of nice. Just finish off May in this really beautiful, bold, creative space. So enjoy it. Just play and relax. Don't have to overthink too much. Then we get into June, and we have our first full moon, our full moon of Gemini season, which is the full moon in Sagittarius. I have a personal relationship with full moons in Sagittarius. I feel like because I'm a Sag rising, every year this is the moon that really illuminates things for me. Might be a very different story for you, but for me, this is a full moon that's very interesting. It's going to be trining Lilith and Mars in Leo. So it's a very honest full moon. We'll get into that in our full moon discussion, of course, but the thing here is just this is about expanding our sight, and Sagittarius is always interested in doing that. So this is going to be all about kind of looking around and seeing where we really are in the process. Shortly after that, on June 5th, Venus is entering Leo as well. And Venus is going to be in Leo until October 10th, which is a long time for Venus because she's going to be doing her Venus retrograde. Now, this is something that I'm not going to get into because Venus retrograde does not start till July 22nd, so we have a little bit of time. But it's just important to note here that we are beginning a very important Venus process. Now, we are actually getting near to the end of her 584-day cycle as we move into Gemini season. However, this is going to be all about reemergence and rebirth, and we are going to be having themes around how creativity plays such an essential and vital role to being here in this world. It isn't just something frivolous. It isn't just something to toss to the side. This is who we are, all of us, every single one of us, and we create in our own ways. We all create in different ways. But this is going to be about the re-emergence of the essential nature of creativity in our lives and how that brings us to life and an honoring of that. And we are just going to begin this on June 5th as Venus begins her journey with Leo over the next 4 or so months. Then on June 11th, we have Pluto retrograde beginning, or no, Pluto retrograde already began on May 1st, excuse me, but Pluto is going to be returning to Capricorn on June 11th and will be in Capricorn until January 20th, 2024. So we're returning to where Pluto has been since 2018. And this is going to be a really great review place. For me, this is like, you know, when you just visit back to some old thought patterns, or maybe you like go visit an old job or an old place where at one point you were doing so much and learning so much and it really fit you, and you go back and you're like, oh yeah, I've changed a lot. This is going to be an acknowledgement of that. And that's part of why I was saying, you know, it's important we start processing how we've changed so we can really embody who we are now. And we're going to be doing that the rest of this year. We're going to be just being like, wow, yeah, I've really changed. I've really learned that skill. I've really become this other person. I've really moved through that intensity, and really taking the time to acknowledge that whole process. And that is going to be our journey with Pluto the rest of this year. On June 11th, we have Mercury moving out of Taurus after a somewhat long stay in Taurus, and that's its home sign, right? So Mercury in Gemini just brings about this creative flourishing. For me, this is such a playful placement over those next few weeks while we have Gemini or Mercury in Gemini. It's so good for playing with your inner storyteller. It's so good for expressing yourself and exploring what's going on in your world. I love it. On June 17th, we have Saturn retrograde beginning in Pisces. This Saturn retrograde lasts until November 4th. It happens every year for about 5 months. This is our first Saturn retrograde with Saturn in Pisces. And I know a lot of times we'll hear Saturn retrograde talked about as this time of like sternness and reality checks, but I actually find this to be one of my favorite aspects of working with Saturn, because this is about incorporating. This is about really being able to ground in and understand what we're learning. And with Saturn in Pisces, this is really about honoring the spiritual aspect of existing. That's going to be a theme we just keep working with over the next couple of years. And this is about getting more deeply in tune and honoring of that process in your life and the role it plays in your life and the role it plays in how you make decisions and how you treat yourself. All of that is going to be getting a chance to really come home, fully develop inside of ourselves and take root in a really meaningful, beautiful way that is actually sustainable and can come with us moving forward. So this is really inside out work. It's about really building up those seeds of trust in ourselves over the next 5 months so that we keep blossoming into something else. And it's a really beautiful place to make space for soul in our lives. You know, we don't say that enough. Like, we just need space for soul in this world. And it starts with us giving ourselves the grace to make space for soul in our own unique lives. And then we're going to end this Gemini season with a new moon in Gemini. This new moon does square Neptune in Pisces. And this is just a great place to check in with dreams that are actually haunted houses. That's what I'm going to say. That's my teaser for this Gemini new moon. Dreams that are actually haunted houses, places where we keep reviewing or trying to force ourselves to be in the same shape. This is going to be a really great moon to explore what dreams really are ours as we are right now. And really, that's going to be the theme we're going to be sitting with again and again, just Gemini season. Who are we now? And how do we want to create? And how do we want to bring our soul more forward into that process? So I'm very excited about this Gemini season. I think it's going to be extremely creative, playful. I think a lot of us are going to be having new ideas, new connections, new conversations. It's a very conversant, playful energy. So let's get into the cards. All right, so I'm going to pull 4 cards that will take us through the approximately 4 weeks or so that we will be moving through this energy with the sun in Gemini. And I'm so curious to see what wants to join us here today. 9 of Swords, classic moment of check-in there. Like I said, this is a season of story weaving, and part of our job in story weaving is also looking at the scary stories we hold within ourselves, and we all do. It's totally natural. Page of Swords. There's our clarity, our breath of fresh air, our playful energy that Gemini brings. Page of Swords has so much of that spirit. King of Swords. The mature clarity that comes with grounding into doing and saying what we really mean. I like that balancing. And the Hermit. I mean, I love the Hermit. It's up there as one of my favorite cards of all time. Let's talk about this. I love this progression actually, because what we see as we move through these 4 cards is a transition from fears and haunted houses to playful, juvenile creativity to a deep maturity and respect for our process. I mean, I love it. This is just such a great transformation. So 9 of Swords, like I said, this is so natural. And whenever we are starting a creative adventure or we are processing how we have changed, we must meet with this part of ourselves. We must meet with this part of ourselves and take care of it. It is natural for this part of ourselves to awaken when we are starting to consider new pathways, when we are starting to consider who we are becoming. It is natural for us to sit in these moments of terror. One of the best ways to work with 9 of Swords, one is to ground, take deep breaths, foster a sense of safety in your body. You know, you can do vagus nerve reset. You can literally just look back and forth for a couple of minutes, and that will help your body be out of fight or flight. It's also great to connect with the stories that are told in this space. Take some time to write them out, to bullet point what they're really saying. Pay attention to what they're saying and where the mythology is coming from. Because if we do not sit with this part of ourselves, it will always kind of try and take over and hold us safe. So it's really important that we initiate this Gemini season with work with our 9 of Swords selves. Now with that, it opens up space for us to then access these beautiful swords people. Page of Swords, King of Swords. And like I said, Page of Swords represents the kind of playful, youthful, try things out and see what happens. And there's a lot of beginner's energy in this Gemini season where we just need to start. You know, we might have a creative project or idea or dream about our lives that we don't even know where to start. We feel so far away from it, we feel unworthy. So it's important that we access the Page of Swords energy, which is just about making those first steps, making those first tries at something, and making space for that playfulness without taking it too seriously. Now this does evolve into this page, or this King of Swords energy, which, like I said, is about the maturity and clarity of really honoring our process and honoring what we truly want. And I think so often we feel like we can't take that moment to just be fully in that state of sovereignty with ourselves, where our dreams and ideas and what we really need and what boundaries we need to set and where we want to put our energy in the future has dignity and space to be heard. So this goes along with kind of what we were saying with the Nine of Swords, listening to that, really taking that into account, taking care of it. We want to do the same for the parts of ourselves that have things that they need or desire that need to be addressed and given dignity. And we finish with a very spiritual and extremely grounded card, which I love. We are going into a lot of mystery as we move through the next few months. We are going to be shifting a lot of energy around with Venus retrograde, with a moon node shift coming up. And the Hermit is really about listening to our inner deep wisdom. Not the wisdom of the mechanized, busy world, constant social media, all of that. The Hermit really speaks to the wisdom that is deep within you. It is old, it is wise, it is that sage. The Hermit also wants to remind you, Gemini season's a very social time where it can often feel like it's about just being out in the world talking, to take time to recharge, to take time to be with yourself, to take time to be with your creative process, to take time to really honor that process. So I think it's a beautiful conversation. I really love the way that this progresses. It feels very natural to me, the way these cards came out. I will be walking us through all of Gemini season. I'm also going to be finishing up our Weaves, Webs, and Wending at the beginning of Gemini season, and that will be available. So if you want to join me on Patreon for that, we are accessing our creativity. We are creating safe spaces for the scared parts of ourselves. We are fostering ourselves as we have already begun, and we need that support to continue. So I'd love to see you there for that and for all the moon activations. We do a lot of beautiful things there, along with twice a month calls where we just talk about life and connect. So I'd love to see you there. I'd love to see you on Instagram, where I will probably be posting pictures of my dog. And I'll leave all the ways you can get in touch with me below. I would really love it if you stuck around this space. Every time somebody likes and comments and subscribes, it helps me get to share this work with you all. And I really want to do that. I really want to share it with whoever it could serve in the world. So I really appreciate your presence here. I will see you all very soon for our next chat. Have a beautiful beginning to Gemini season.